Well, hey there, Gen Xers. Welcome to the next installment of our interviews. Today is another one of our special interviews that we're working with September 11th, Remembrance. We're looking for some really interesting information and discussion with one of Ed's friends for years. And we were just talking about how long and how we won't say it because I'm still just 25 years old.
Right.
So I'm going to turn it over to Ed. And Ed, why don't you introduce our guest today?
All right, guys. Everybody out there in the Gen X audience, all our listeners, it gives me a great deal of pleasure and honor to be able to introduce to you a long-time friend of mine. We served together in the Marines from 1988 to 1991. We were in earlier, but we met each other in Kings Bay, Georgia, Naval submarine base there. We were at the Marine Security Force Company, and then we went to Desert Storm together in 90 and 91. I was with Charlie 14. He was with Delta 14. We were on the same ship, the USS Okinawa. And this is my longtime friend, Officer Charles Young of the Alexandria Police Department. He goes by Churck. Churck, good morning. How you doing?
Good. How are you, Ed?
Outstanding.
So formal.
Yeah, it's a long friendship we got
person.
going on there. Matt and Churck were both at my wedding with Nisha. It's going on 4 years this coming October.
Yeah, getting there. We're gonna have to come around for a fifth anniversary. We'll all come back and hang out again.
Yeah. So I'm going to kick it off with you, Churck, because I've known you for so long and everything. Topic of this program is the 20th anniversary in honor and remembrance of the September 11, 2001 terror attacks in New York City and Washington, D.C. From previous conversations, of course, I know that you were there. You were at Ground Zero in Washington, D.C. at the Pentagon. Exactly where were you on September 11th when all this occurred way back when?
So I was currently working with the Arlington Sheriff's Office on 9/11, and I was working in the jail. And the first plane had hit. Of course, everybody kind of thought it was a pilot error or whatever. Second plane hit, then everybody kind of figured out this is not by accident. So anyway, the jail went on lockdown. I was working downstairs in booking. So after the second plane hit, I ended up having to go outside. I had some keys that I had to get rid of, and I walked upstairs, dropped them off, went over into the courthouse. As I was going up the elevator, I stepped off the 9th floor where our office was and ran into one of the other deputies, and he was running down the hallway. I said, "What is going on?" He said, "Hey, the Pentagon just got hit." He had a car, he had a cruiser. So I said, "Let's go." Got into his car, drove down, went down 110, which parallels the river. And he's asking me, he's driving, asking me, where are we going? Where do we go? So of course I said, wherever you see smoke. We ended up on the west side of the building where the plane had hit. Just to the south of the heliport, there's a little helicopter port there. So we pulled up, the building you can see was hit. We don't know what it was. Ended up running up to the heliport, and there were some guys there from Fort Myer. They're the ones that run the airport, the heliport there.
Yeah. And
they're in the fire department, and we ended up moving these big green tubs of, I don't even know what they were, away from the building. Because the guy was saying they would explode. So there was a bunch of people there. Me and my partner at the time moved all these away, and then we started to go up to the building, up to the Pentagon, and actually try to get people out. So that's where we ended up ultimately, within probably 5 minutes of the plane hitting, we guess.
Holy cow. Hey, I have a quick just side question, because one of the things we talk about in our show quite often is recognizing situational awareness And like if you walk into a store or something and you recognize that there's an attack, like a shooter or something coming in, would you be the type of person to run toward to protect other people, or would you be the person to run and hide? It always amazes me that there are people that run toward the smoke and toward the danger. I don't know, maybe it's too deep of a question or something, I don't know, but what is it? What do you think it is that makes you go toward this big burning building that just exploded?
I don't know. And Ed and I had this discussion actually about, because some of the military people were running away from the building. I remember Marines, Navy, Army. And at the time, I didn't really process it. I kind of was like, this is odd. It didn't make sense to me that these guys should be going the other way. I don't know why I do that. It's just, I don't know. That's just my DNA, I guess.
Yeah. Just something you do. Yeah.
Yeah. So we, me and Art was the other guy. We ended up pulling out, I don't know how many people from the building now. The Pentagon windows sit up kind of high. I remember at one point he was inside one of the windows. We were holding on to him. There was a couple Pentagon officers there with us. I remember there were some military people there helping us. And we pulled out one guy. He had a suit and it was like burned into him. It was bad. He had flesh hanging off of him. He was screaming. We grabbed a hold of him, picked him up, took him out. I think Park Police has a helicopter, Eagle One, and they had already landed, and we took him to the helicopter.
It's all right, Chuck. Sorry, man.
It's all right. So
I think from our last conversation, you said that guy passed.
We don't know. Actually, last year, Art did he went to the news and one of the news stations, and he actually asked if anybody could identify this guy. Of course, with the HIPAA and all this other stuff. Where did he go? I don't know where he went. He probably went to Washington Hospital Center because they have a burn center there. But he tried to find out through the news that who he was, if he lived. We don't know. I remember the girl that I helped carry out with a Pentagon officer. I remember I remember seeing her. I remember what she was wearing. I remember she was wearing like a black belt with studs on it. It was a black female, probably in her 20s, late 20s. I never knew where she went. I mean, once we took them out, they had medics waiting, and they just started taking people away. And so, I mean, I don't know how long that lasted, taking people out until the fire department got there. Once the fire department got there, Arlington, I think Alexandria, Fairfax, I mean, it was a lot of apparatus coming. My partner, Art, he was telling me stuff that I don't even remember. I don't remember, but he said that they grabbed me by the back of the neck and said, you got to get away from the building because shit was falling down. The glass, it was bomb glass, but it had melted and it was falling down all around us. I don't even remember that. There's stuff I just don't remember. I mean, from the pictures, Ed, you could see that, that it was just a mess.
Yeah.
Shit everywhere, parts of the plane everywhere, bags, just stuff all over the place.
So you guys ended up being some of the first people on the scene before most of the rest of the fire and rescue got there. There was some personnel there before you.
Yeah.
You had a lot of people come in after you and pull you out.
Yes. Yeah. And there were some state troopers who I know that actually went into the Pentagon from the other side and ended up, one got really sick.
Yeah.
That I know. I still keep in touch with him. He's still on the job, actually. But we were kind of there really, really, really quick.
Yeah, I think fire and rescue ends up getting trained with that as far as like going to a scene and people want to try to go back in because there are hazards, of course, to those people, not just the fire and the heat, but the inhalation of the smoke.
Right. Yeah. That was the big, I mean, we couldn't get into the building. I mean, you could get in there, but all you're going to do is become a casualty, and then somebody else is going to have to worry about you.
Yeah. Then you're combat ineffective, and somebody's got to pull you out too. So you guys had already, like you mentioned before, you guys had already seen the news. The first plane had already hit the first tower.
Yeah.
And so you heard all the news, but so when this plane hit, you guys must have been going out of your minds. As you're approaching the scene, what was that? What's going on in your head, and what's the feeling like on the scene?
It was just, get there and we'll figure it out kind of thing. I never, we didn't know what we were going to see or face. So it was just, and he drove, I just said, he had a 4-wheel drive. He had a Durango. I remember a Dodge Durango.
Yeah.
And he, it was just go there and what can we do?
Now at that point, were you cognizant were you thinking in your back of your head it might be a terrorist attack, or were you still wondering could it be an accident?
No, I figured it was done on purpose. It was terrorism, based on what, of course, happened up in New York.
Yeah.
But we ended up staying there until about 5 or 6 o'clock. Of course, back then cell phones were fairly new-ish. Right. Nobody knew where I was from work. Knew where I was, but a couple of people. They just knew I walked out of the building. My supervisor didn't know where I was, which, okay. Christy, actually, I got somebody's cell phone, a Metro bus driver, because Metro buses were pulling up. And at some point I called her, and it went through. I remember a lot of people couldn't get through. The cell phones were all clogged up. You couldn't get through, but I called her right away. She was working in Annapolis. And I said, I'm fine. And she had that, we talked later, and she says, I knew you were down there. It's just, and then eventually work found out that I was down there.
Yeah.
And it just happened that way. I bumped into him, and it was just like, let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I stayed down until about 6 o'clock, and finally got back. And I do remember drinking a Red Bull. First time I drank a Red Bull was at the Pentagon on 9/11, because people were bringing us stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know why I remember that, but I do.
Well, it's a Red Bull. That's why
you're trying to stay hydrated. You probably didn't get a whole lot of water breaks that day.
Nah, I mean, it was the hose. I mean, my feet were wet. I didn't have waterproof boots on, with all the hoses and the fire department putting water down. I remember I had wet feet that day.
Did they lock things down so that you guys couldn't get your vehicle out at that point, or were they trying to get you guys out?
We were stuck there. I mean, we were stuck there. I mean, there was all the apparatus and the medics and fire coming in.
Yeah.
At some point, the FBI came down, of course, and then we had Arlington, and the problem wasn't a problem, but jurisdictionally, who was in charge of this thing? Mm-hmm. It ultimately was Arlington Fire, because it was a fire that had to be dealt with first, and then, of course, I guess the FBI eventually took over the scene.
Yeah, as far as investigating, sure.
Right. I mean, that was, of course, going to happen, of course, but it just, it was a mess. People telling people what to do, and it was a big. I mean, we learned a lot from 9/11. Mm-hmm. A lot of stuff about working with other agencies and departments.
Isn't it true that several of the ICS training and ICS and NIMS came from the terrorist attacks that occurred in order to try to bring those organizations together? Yeah, and to recognize levels of jurisdiction and things like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we all have mutual aid. We share that with every agency around us, and that incident made it, because we couldn't talk to another jurisdiction on the radio. I mean, radios were not interlinked, but now they are. So if you want to switch over to whoever, you can talk to them. just like we had the Pentagon officer got killed, a few weeks ago at the Pentagon. He, it was more of because you have 4 or 5 agencies responding right away, and everybody can talk to each other and kind of figure out who's got what, who's doing what. There's no blue on blue, because that happens every now and then.
Yeah.
But yes, we've learned a lot from that incident about talking to each other and what, they train together, we train together, they do all these training just with other agencies, police, fire, we all have to work together now. I mean, it's been like that for a while, but we've definitely learned a lot from it.
Yeah, you mentioned in a previous conversation, because I was asking, because a lot of people, of course, over the years that we've talked, we have chats with everybody else. And we say, oh, remember that day? Where were you? What were you doing? And everybody has, their different story. Almost everybody's like doing something. And then they turn to the news. You were there. I mean, I can't stress the significance enough that you were there on the ground. And in our previous discussions, you were just describing how just like so surreal everything was. Everything was so, there's just utter chaos and confusion. Walk us through that like fog of war as you're going through that scene there.
You kind of, it's just, you just do stuff. I mean, it's just, you don't even think about it. You just what can I do? That was it. Where can we go? What can we do? And, I remember they said a second plane was coming in.
Oh.
And then we started to get away from the building. And I was like, you know what? No, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. That's, because that happened at least once that I remember. And then I remember at some point, somebody was looking up at the air and an F-16 flew by and they thought it was another plane. And I was like, that's one of our planes. So they had a bird out of Andrews showed up at some point and was providing well, I don't think they were armed. I think they just put them up on the tarmac and shot them out. And I think there was one. I remember one. So, which was a good sound. It was a good feeling to hear that, somebody up above us is watching. So,
and by that time, they had probably grounded all other aircraft, probably across the country. Right. So they're probably guarding airspace. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, it was, I don't know how long it took them to ground everybody that day. I don't remember, but it was kind of eerie not to hear because, National Airport's right there. And,
so the whole scene is eerie. There's a lot of chaos and confusion. It's surreal. You're like almost in an out of body experience, but because of your training and your background, you're just doing things. But you saw a whole lot of people that were obviously injured and affected. Did they have, was the FBI there to debrief you as far as a security thing? Were there casualty debriefings to people out there going to try to help or anything else like that on the mental issue?
Not that day.
Okay.
I ended up having to go and talk to a therapist. I had to. Work made me do that. And I understood that. Yeah. Because of what happened.
Sure.
But no, there was nothing there. It was just so chaotic that it was just I don't even think that was a thought that day. At least I don't remember. I know I didn't talk to anybody that day. It was, I just remember going back and me and him, Art, my partner, we didn't say one word on the way back.
Jeez.
To the department. So we got there. And of course, people were coming up to me, how are you? And I was just like, leave me. I just want to go home. Yeah. I didn't even go home. Actually, I didn't even go home. I stayed at a friend's house in Arlington. I called Christy and said, hey, I'm not coming home. I'm going back. I'm going to go back tomorrow.
Now, were you physically drained or were you ready or were you amped up, ready to go back?
I wanted to go back.
Right. Immediately, huh?
Immediately go back. But they said, no, you're not going back. There's no reason to go back.
Were you able to sleep that night?
Not really.
Yeah.
I don't think I really did sleep. the next day they drove me home. They actually took me home the day after. At some point they took me home. They said, there's no reason to go down there.
Yeah.
Everything's kind of, secured and settled. Everything's settled down. So there's nothing for you to do.
And stay in your lane kind of thing, right?
Yeah. So I went home. They drove me home, and I don't know when I went back to work. I don't even remember how long I took off. Probably a couple of days I took off and came back to work.
Yeah. So we're going on 20 years that, since this occurred, and we can see how it affected you from being on the ground there at that time. It's just amazing how much that can affect somebody even across that time span. So, and you're not a rookie. You're a veteran officer. You and I were in Desert Storm together, and you saw dead bodies then on the island of Philaka, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you've been a cop since, and you've seen like fatal accident scenes and other fatal incidents. So for you to reflect upon this and be so affected is pretty striking to me. And it goes to like, do you see any counseling to this day, like go to the VA for PTSD or anything else like that?
No.
Just deal with it.
It's at work. It's a little different. And the one thing people like, my supervisor, if I go to like someone catches on fire, I probably going to avoid that if I can, and be like, hey, I don't want to be a part of this, and I my supervisor would probably be like, you're okay. I get it.
Just send somebody else to respond to that.
Yeah. I mean, unless it happens right in front of me or something, but
then you have to do something.
That's the one thing. Yeah. The smell of jet fuel. It's like JP5.
Yeah.
That burning smell is just, it lingers. I can smell it still. I mean,
that's an interesting thing, because there's scenes of movies where they're in a helicopter or something and they're flying, and the scene is so real. It's like a flashback when we were in the Marines or other things I've done in the Army, and you can feel it's like you just, all that extra sensory perception comes back in a way. You feel the kind of like the wind under your feet. You smell the JP5 and the helicopter fuel fumes and stuff like that. But I was going to the VA for PTSD counseling for a while after not after Storm, but after OYF and Gitmo. I knew a cop too when I was a police officer. He's an older veteran officer. He said something pretty similar. He got on a call where somebody had called and said their baby had stopped breathing. When he got there, the baby had already passed, and he was trying to bring it back, but he couldn't. So he told, when I was partnering with him, he told me just straight off, if it's a call like that, Ed, you've got to go to it. I can't handle another baby dying in my hands.
It's weird because every now and then I'll look at the clock. It'll be 9/11, or I'll see something that says 9/11, or, it doesn't necessarily have to be 9/11 related, but like a clock, I'll look at the clock and be like, well, it's 9/11. And I'm just like, damn, it just sticks out all the time. It happens all the time. I'm like, this is weird.
Before 9/11, there was terrorism, right? There were events that had occurred before that, but this was kind of the big linchpin of war on terror. Do you think there's ever a chance that terrorism is extinguished? Or,
no.
I mean, for our country?
No.
Yeah.
No, I would say no. I mean, I think people just want to kill us for whatever reason. I'm always somebody out there wants to kill us, I'm sure, and do harm to us. So I don't think it'll ever go away.
And that's just the sort of like the tactic of choice for those personnel who believe they've got a grievance and they believe they have no other option. And I've run into FBI guys that say, well, we'll never have another 9/11, something like that again, which I think is wishful thinking.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a big, grand type of attack is what most people are trying to achieve. So they're well aware that there's people always planning on it. So I'm just hoping that the other shoe doesn't drop one these days.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. They only have to get it right once. We have to get it right all the time.
Yeah, and they can
That's
fail.
right.
Like the FBI and others, they've got so much tapped into online, and a lot of the stuff that we see that is a great achievement or accomplishment as far as the war on terror, as far as combating what they're calling like a homegrown violent extremist, and it's those so-called lone wolves. Most of the time, they get those guys by having basically like an infiltrator in the group that's basically an agent provocateur. And they've brought up cases where they thought the defense has tried to say, well, this is entrapment. The Department of Justice has been able to prove, no, we weren't enticing this guy to do anything that he wasn't already planning on doing anyway. We were just sort of facilitating him going to jail instead of killing people. But while a lone wolf can get away with a little bit of something, I still don't think that they're the most significant threat. I believe that there's still IGRC, Iran, and Hezbollah type people trying to come in through the Canadian or Mexico border, getting together as a group and doing something extremely grand. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen one of these days. And I'm hoping Homeland Security and FBI and CIA are tracking all that.
So are there ways, Chuck, that you feel like the country has, aside from the NIMS and the ISCS and the departments communicating better and so on, are there ways that you feel that the country may have improved or bettered ourselves against terrorist type of attacks?
Yeah, I would say they have. I mean, listening to other agencies, I know I've talked to Ed before, and his experience with this stuff, and I'm hoping that, HSI and everybody that deals with this shit, JTTF, I hope that they do your job.
Yeah.
And let's not let this shit happen again. And I'm hoping that that this has made everything better on a grander scale as far as working together. Because back then, the FBI probably didn't talk to, well, it wasn't ICE, it was INS, and so I think now that there's more talking, and more deconflicting, because that could be a problem too.
Yeah,
two agencies are working the same thing, and then they bump heads, and it just becomes a mess. So deconflicting, and I think a lot of that all these other agencies, big agencies, because it was a big ego thing. The FBI and this and that, and so I think it's gotten better, and I hope it stays that way.
Yeah.
Right.
So we've got that huge intelligence apparatus, all those agencies out there, and they do an awful lot more collaboration now, and they do have whole units dedicated to mission deconfliction. But some of that's on like mission level. Some of them still obviously not going to give up their human sources. There's sources and methods that are still too sensitive to just fully share with everybody. So I think there's a little bit of that still, but it's interesting. We're having this conversation, and we planned it previously. However, since we initially planned this, Chuck, there's been some other significant media events, as you know, in the last week or so. The Biden administration is elected to basically try to pull completely out of Afghanistan in a really quick and ad hoc fashion. Now, without having a significant presence in Afghanistan, which a lot of people are saying, well, we shouldn't be in Afghanistan forever. But we've got tens of thousands of troops in Germany post-World War II. I think we've got 37,000 or so in Japan still post-World War II. I think we've got about 25 or 30,000 in Korea post-Korean War. So the way this has been, this withdrawal from Afghanistan has been, there's going to be a vacuum in there, and it's as a landlocked country and as a transit country and a training grounds. What's your thoughts on, from 9/11 witness perspectives and Homeland Security's perspectives and law enforcement perspectives on events going on with this Afghanistan pool?
Well, I hope it doesn't bleed back over here. I mean, it's a shit show.
Yeah.
As we all have seen. And is this going to, who are these people we're bringing over?
Yeah.
I assume they're going to vet them, but what does that mean? I don't know. I mean, are they sneaking people in here to do harm at some point? I don't know. So I'm hoping this doesn't breed more terrorism, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert in that field, but I'm just hoping that doesn't happen.
There's multiple things going on. We got, 20th anniversary of 9/11. We're pulling out of Afghanistan. So that's going to be it's always going to be a terrorism safe haven. And we're bringing back tens of thousands of Afghanis, and they're being housed in Fort Bliss. And I know they're not vetted. It's going to take a long time to vet them, even if they were helping us out downrange over there. And we don't know that there's probably none of them that have been tested for COVID, and they probably, I don't know if they've had any vaccinations. So there's like a lot of threat and vulnerability there. So
I think it's a shit show and a mess. I mean, I don't know what else.
To simplify it.
I mean, it's
in layman's terms.
I think some of these people we do owe gratitude and to some of these people, and they're still even probably stuck over there, that they deserve to come over here if they want to. But where do we draw the line with all these other people? What do we do with them? How do we? I mean, that's a mess. I mean, Christy got invited to go to Germany for 90 days to help out because she works for HSI, but of course she's like, no, I'm not going anywhere. So, but it's just a mess. I don't know what the answer would be.
And then you and I are former Marines, and seeing the news that some explosions went off out there. And I think the news has said it was like 11 or 12 Marines are killed now. That's a tough pill to swallow too.
Yeah. It's to see it now, seeing their faces today on social media. It's just not, it just sucks.
We've got to reach out to our friends on the Naval Submarine Base Kings Bay, Georgia site, and send them a shout out.
Mm-hmm.
So
one question I have for you, kind of back to the 9/11 stuff. You can't go through an event like that and be on the ground without it changing you. I'm wondering, can you put to words ways that it's changed you personally, that the actual event 9/11 changed you personally?
I mean, I think it family's important, more important. Christy was there when I came back home, and she knew I wasn't right. She just knew, and she's like, you need to go see somebody. And of course, with that whole thing, and I did. I had to go see somebody, and it wasn't easy. But it just makes me, appreciate what I have here in this country. A lot of people talk shit about this country. I get it. Ed and I have been to other places. You go to the Philippines, they're making freaking, even back then before 9/11, they're making houses out of MRE boxes. And here we are living where we live, but it just makes, work, work seems to, now that I switched fields and I've gone into the police field, it's because that was only 2 years after 9/11. I went over to work in Alexandria. It just brought more, brought as a whole, for personally, it was just, family. It was like, hey, because I wanted to go back in the Marine Corps actually after 9/11. And Christy, I didn't know this until sometime later, that she was having a mental breakdown with that, and she had a problem with that. She came to me and said, Chuck, I don't want you to go back over there. And I said, so I finally said, okay, I'm not gonna do it. If this is gonna affect you like this, I'm not gonna go back over. So
and you had you had a variety of those reasons. Like if you were single, that would have been one thing, but you had a wife and 2 kids.
Right. Yeah. So I got it. I said, I get it. I did what I did, and I'll leave it alone. So it was hard not to do it, but I did it because of family. I said, if you want me home, then I'll stay home. So
Yeah.
But it just, it just makes me appreciate more what I have here. Because shit can happen in a second.
Yeah.
I mean, just like at work, it can happen in 1 second and shit just be sideways. And I'm happy I was able to go down. I don't want to say happy, but it was just, things just lined up. My stars were in alignment that day. And I'm thinking it just happened that way,
Yeah.
Sucked to go down there and see shit, but it kind of woke me up and made me appreciate a lot more in life. Because a lot of those people, of course, we know didn't have a choice. And
yeah,
it's a powerful statement, really, because we see, I'm not just going to call it the youth of today, but there's a certain group in our country today that has never been outside of the country and probably not even outside of their local community. And so they don't understand the way different people think. They're stuck in this echo chamber, right?
Yep.
And it's this echo chamber of the US sucks.
Yeah.
The US is a terrible place to live. We're a bunch of, terrible slave owning white people or something. And it's just this, it's incredible to think that if you just took a step outside of your own little echo chamber. And one of the just great things I had from my history is I had the opportunity in my job to travel around the world and see so many different cultures. For about 4 years, I traveled internationally, right? So I was in places like the Philippines I stayed in Singapore for 10 days, and they kept threatening me that they were gonna make me eat monkey brains, but the worst I had to eat was durian, right? And then I've been to the Brazil and Argentina and several of the other countries, Chile and so on. Most of it pretty professional, but some of the places that I had to go, because I'm in security, we had to go to some of the seemingly pits of hell. And you're meeting people and seeing people around you, and you're going, man, this is not right. This is not safe being here. I can't wait to get back home. And that's all I could think is as I'm going through this, I'm like, it's really cool to see that beach, but I can't wait to get back home.
Yeah.
Where they're speaking my language. We have the same general culture, same general thoughts and ideas. We have a constitution, we have law, we have things that keep us safe at night. These are some of the things that make me go, I love my country.
Hell yeah.
And I find it amazing that we have this separation of people. Again, I'm not going to just say it's the youth, because it's not just young people. It's even older people. I'm amazed that they can think that way, and I just think it's sad.
Well, we got Churck here with us. And I just think when we're talking about like 9/11, something like that happens, and there's a lot of Americans that step up and they become people of honor and respect. And it doesn't, you can only do so much as one person, and even collectively. Sometimes it's not the result of what you did. It's the fact that you even went out there and tried despite the odds and everything else like that. Churck might have run into a couple of other people that I knew that was working at the Pentagon that day. I was shortly after 9/11, I got back in the military, and I ended up going to GTF Gitmo for a while. And there was a Colonel Bruce Vargo there, and there was Admiral Thomas, and I believe they were both at the Pentagon there. And you don't know them, you didn't see them, but they're probably right there in the same area with you. And I believe I heard that they've got Admiral Thomas's Navy dress whites behind glass in either at the Defense Intelligence Agency Center, the DIAC out there. Maybe it's the Pentagon, because it was all burned up. So he's in those whites, but his uniform got all burned up. That's what I heard anyway. It's a tremendous pleasure and honor to be able to speak to you, to have this opportunity, and to have known you all these years. And I'm really glad that we were able to get on this episode and talk with you about these things. And I know they're hard to talk about too.
Yeah, And I haven't been back since, actually.
Yeah.
I haven't specifically been to the memorial yet, believe it or not. I've been invited, but I just haven't had, it's not the time yet. So
yeah. Have you been to
you
been to the memorial in New York?
Yes, I did that last year. Kristen,
that's a tough one.
It was pretty, it was pretty emotional. I mean,
I've been there twice, and the first time I walked around the thing where they've got all the names. The second time Nish and I were there, and a name caught my attention because they listed her and her unborn child. I almost fell down. I just can't. That's tough to take.
It was pretty emotional. So, and I don't know if I'll be back this year to the memorial, or back to not New York, but I don't know if I'll do the Arlington one this year. If I get invited, I might go. Yeah. But I'd rather do it on my own terms, actually, not go with a bunch of people and dignitaries and any of that nonsense. I'd rather do it on my own time. But I think the memorial is actually closed right now. Not the Arlington one.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. We've talked before, and did you get some sort of presidential medal for being there?
I got some awards through the state and locally for what happened.
Yeah.
So what are we doing the rest of the day, Chuck? Are you going to go out and go duck hunting or fishing and drinking beers and smoking cigars?
Duck hunting doesn't come in until October, November.
Okay.
No, we're actually going to pick up one of our midshipmen, one of our plebes from the Naval Academy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we're getting ready to do that at 12 o'clock. We're going to go pick her up. It's a female. We haven't met her yet. And we're going to see about our second one. We have two this year, a boy and a girl.
Now, explain this process, how it works to us. I don't know what you're talking about, really.
So the Naval Academy has plebes every year, new midshipmen that come in.
Okay.
So you get to apply every year. You have to apply just because they have to do security checks on you. And basically what you do is you get picked by them, because you kind of fill out an application. You say what you like to do. Do you have kids? Do you smoke? You have to live within a 20-mile radius of the academy. And basically you sponsor these kids, and they're all, 18, 19 years old. They're going to the academy for the first year. So you can go and pick them up, bring them home to the house, and they can just hang out at the house. You can take them fishing. You can take them to whatever you want to do. So basically it's a home away from home for these midshipmen, because most of them they're not from here.
Yeah,
I think one's from North Carolina, one's from Indiana this year, so they don't know anybody outside of the academy. So it's just something cool to do. Watch these kids, go through the academy for 4 years and get commissioned, hopefully as a Marine Corps butterball, but we haven't had that happen yet in 5 years, but we're trying. Every year we're trying. We're going to try to push them into the Marine Corps, but I get it. They got to
do they realize that you're going to do that? Do they realize that you're going to try and push them?
Oh yeah. When they come to the house,
you put it onto your application. You put it onto your application. We're going to try to push you in.
Well, they see Chuck and they're like, no, I'm not going to go into the Marines. I mean, I'm going to have to lead some knucklehead like this guy.
Yeah, butterball lieutenant. But we're going to do that today and hang out with him or her, and maybe him. I haven't heard from him yet, so
I'm fairly familiar with the midshipman and that process and all that. We've never hosted one. Is it actually the plebe that chooses you, or is it the Navy that chooses for that plebe?
The plebe chooses you.
Okay.
Based on your interest.
Somebody actually chose to stay with you.
It was probably Christy. It was probably Christy there.
This is our 5th year doing it. Our first ones are flying. They're out in Texas or something. They're learning to be pilots with the Navy, but that's okay. Awesome. We'll take that.
Yeah,
we'll take that.
With the Navy. He rolls his eyes.
The Navy. I mean, it's the Navy. I mean, we need the Navy. I get it. We need the Navy.
We need boats. We need boats.
We need boats and aircraft carriers
and big shooting guns.
Yeah. We need big subs. We need boomers.
Yeah.
We're going to have some people in the audience out there from the Army. They'd be like, the Army's got more boats than the Navy.
Okay.
Okay, so what? You're not known for that, all right?
Yeah. All right.
We'll have to get some Army people on too to make them feel good.
That's okay. We need the Army too.
So Chuck, one of the things we do at the end of each one of our shows is we do this kind of parting shots. It's basically a time, I guess, of reflection or things we've talked about in the show. If there's any important points or things that you want to bring out. So as our guest, I'm wondering, do you have any thoughts, any ideas, things we've already talked about as a parting shot for today?
I would say remember, just remember, what happened the other day in Afghanistan with these Marines and the medic, the doc, as we would call them in the Marine Corps. But, just, learn from it. If you can. I mean, there's some people that are not going to do that, but learn from history. Of course, we all know about history in this country now and how people want to try to erase some of it, but you can't erase history. I don't give a shit what you do, but just learn from it. I mean, treat everybody nice. It's a crazy world we're living in right now. I don't understand some of it, but
it is crazy.
Remember and learn from it.
Okay, excellent. Good points. Ed, what about you?
I would echo that and say 9/11, we got 20 years coming up. Never forget, like Chuck said, just always treat everybody with dignity and respect as much as, you get what you deserve, and it's give and get. So if you're going to disrespect others, they're probably going to disrespect you. Some sort of emergency type situation comes up, and if you run away from it, it doesn't mean you're lesser of a person. It just means that you're scared and something happens and everybody gets scared. But when something like that happens and we've got people that put their lives in danger and run to it to try to help others, and they may not even know what they're going to do, those are the kind of people we can't throw rocks at or try to point fingers at or criticize or anything, whether they're law enforcement, first responders, or military. All is something went boom, and some people are going to run away from it. Fine. You're seeking safety, that safety for you and your family. Some people are going to risk themselves and try to go to it to figure out what happened and try to see what they can do to help others that may be hurt or maybe even killed, instead of being judgmental on anybody like that, no matter where they're at, what kind of situation they're in. Instead of being judgmental, we should always support that type of effort, especially with the coming up of the 20th anniversary of the September 11 attacks. We need to keep unifying as a country and as human beings. Nothing is ever going to stop man's inhumanity towards his fellow man. Those who are not being inhuman and they're trying to show each other dignity and respect and love, all those people, regardless of who you are and where you are, you're going to have to get together and work together and stay prepared. Be prepared and stay prepared.
Yeah, awesome. Good point, Ed. Thanks. For my parting shot, I want to thank you both, actually, but Chuck, especially you, for today, for joining us. I want to thank you for your service.
Yeah.
Not only as a Marine, not only for what you did on the day, but all that you've done in police, in law enforcement since. I think it's changed you in a substantial way, but I think more importantly, it's exposed who you are, which is a person who runs toward danger instead of away from danger. That's a strong person, man. I can't show my appreciation enough, but I want to let you know that we respect you, we care about you, and thank you. The last thing I wanted to say is more to our audience, and it's a point that both Ed and Chuck brought up, and that's be vigilant and always be learning. If you continue to learn and teach yourself, you can always be prepared. And that's one of the best things you can do for yourself, for your family, for your community. So that's it for today. Thank you for joining us on the call today, and Chuck, have a great time with your plebes, and hope you enjoy that time. Ed, look forward to our next show, man.
Can I say one thing?
No,
that I should have brought up. So
bring it, Chuck. Bring
it, man.
So to make a long story short, when I got hired with Alexandria back in 2003, he's still my colleague. He's actually one of our captains. He's from Iran, actually. And long story short, he's a little younger than me, but his mom and him and his siblings had to get out of Iran. So they got out of Iran back in the day with the Shah and all that. And long story short, when I got hired, he found out what had happened when I worked in Arlington. And he actually came to me and said, hey, I just want to talk to you about this. And he just said, do you have any feelings, like negative feelings, or do you hate people of Muslim faith? And I said, no. I said, it doesn't, just because these guys were, wherever they were from over there, and they were probably most of them were Muslim in faith or whatever, I said, I don't treat any other Muslims, look at them and say, you're a terrorist. Right. So I kind of think that's kind of important, because it hasn't swayed my way of thinking about people, because I believe not everybody that's a Muslim faith or Islamic faith wants to blow us up.
Right.
I just believe that,
No, I think that's a valuable piece of information, and something, just like Ed was saying, show people respect. Yes. If you show others respect, they'll respect you back, or at least if they're good people, they would respect you back. And that's, no dishonor to any other peoples of faith and all that. So good point, Chuck. Thank you.
Okay.
Good stuff. All right.
Let's go have a beer.
Let's go have a beer. It's a little early for beer still, but I mean, hey, it's 5:00 somewhere, right?
Yeah.